Lab number 272. Now we'll add a bit of analytics to our mobile application. Basically, there is a pre-configured analytics engine already running down there, and basically in order to enable it, there is nothing you need to do. So you have the analytics console that you can access right from the link from operations console, which is already there. You will see the data there ready, so you can filter it, for example, for the last couple of days to see more data if you were doing your development yesterday with the first part of our tutorials. So there will be a crash information. Application will be crashed. Next time it will start. Crash logs will be submitted to server, and you will see all them here. You can define different alerts. So we have the alert management system, which can help you to search for different event types, like network transactions, for example, when you expect that adapter request round trip time should be, for example, lower than 2 seconds. So in this case, you can define alert, and if it will be greater than this amount, you can say that I want to check it each minute. You can actually add this alert into the console, so once it will appear, you will have the message in the console. Or you can also do a network post, meaning you can provide the URL and, for example, push to your monitoring engine this information with specific headers, with even some specific authentication, for example, basic authentication with username and password. So you can save this, define this alert, and manage it. One more interesting feature is the application logs itself, both server-side and client-side logs. For example, you can just simply search for everything that happened within your app. So it means that from the application, when you log in something, you can have that message appearing on server either by sending the couple of those, like you will wait for messages to fill the specific file, you can define the file size, and then send them in like queue. Or you can actually manually trigger analytics send, and we can check it right from the device. Because we have our application running, we can simply go to inspection tab in our console, and using the WL logger, define, for example, that we want to gather the analytics level, specific analytics level. Let's go with, for example, level debug, because verbose will take too much consumption of our CPU and emulator and so on. So we will go with level debug, and I forgot to close like this. And then using the logger, we can send any information. So this is the same way as you're doing with console log. You can do with WL logger, for example, using the error message, and then send something like hello world, just like that. So this information is already logged. In order to send it to the console, you can wait, or you can actually manually perform this operation using, again, WL logger, and then send. So this function, when it triggers, it takes that analytics data and sends it to our database, which is the file-based database, and then you can search for this data and you will see that message. Of course, you can easily filter those for log level, for operation systems, for whatever application names that you want to kind of diagnose here and you want to find information about. And this is really useful. Together with that, you can search for a specific device. So because we are running on the specific emulator, and this is the only device on which we are testing our application, basically what we can do is we can get the device logs. So we can say, get me all the device logs, and you will download that in JSON format. And afterwards, what you can actually do, you can open those device logs, and of course you may format it to make it more readable. And afterwards you will see all the messages down there, and somewhere there will be your hello world also, with the level error from this device, and so on, with this timestamp and without any package. So if you want to get more information about how to use all of those, go to docs, then to developing applications, and navigate to client-side log collection. There will be a general information, and then how to perform a login within a specific application type. In our case, we are talking about Cordova applications. So you can set the interval for logging specific data. You can log it manually. You can try to perform some automatic action. So for example, in our app, as you remember, we were doing the first thing, the authentication. So there in our app.ts file, on the same level, on app.ts file, we were actually defining the handle challenge, and if in handle challenge there is error message received as the input parameter, we were just saying that, hey, there is the error and some error message plus number of remaining attempts. So what we can do is we can do a login right here. We can use this API WL logger. Let's go with error also. And here we can say that this is the authentication error. Plus to that, we can provide this response error message to see what exactly error happened. And we can manually trigger sending the logs here. So it's not recommended for production, but we are just doing the test project, so we want to see that in the console right away. So we saved our changes, and now let's try to push our application. So for that, we can do mfp def app web update to use direct update that we configured in our previous lab. And this one will deploy the latest version to our server. Just like that. Now we can restart the app. Okay, the update was found. Let's update our application. Okay, let's try to enter wrong credentials, just that don't match to each other. So we get the wrong credentials message. Let's go with the correct one. And here we are. So let's check what we have in our console. Here on our client side log for error message, we should have these wrong credentials as you just see. So now what we can do is we can actually create some kind of our own chart in the way how we want to see it. So for example, let's go with our client logs. Let's create a custom chart that will be like a table for our errors. So we want to see just errors. Let's have the property, so this is the columns that we want to add. The first one will be timestamp, for example. Next one, let's go with application name. And then let's add a property for a specific message. And then we want to see finally something like device operation system, for example, and device operation system version. So just like that. So this is the basic table. As you can see, it has the timestamp, application name, and all the messages with the device OS and device OS version. So what we can do next is to add a couple of filters. For example, we can go with the filtering for a specific message or for a specific timestamp. We can do some generic things like filter just for a log level. For example, that will be equal only to error. So we can add that filter, and as you can see now, there are only info about the errors that are there with the specific level. You can add a couple of filters. So for example, you can filter for a specific device application name or just the general message and so on. But we are good to go with the filters that we selected. Then we can define how many rows. For example, we are interested just in 3 rows. We can filter that, sort by timestamp, and, for example, asking order. So this is our table. This chart can be exported. So if you want the same config on different machine, you can export this chart and import on that machine by just clicking this export chart button. What you will have is the configuration of your chart in JSON format that you can then open, for example, with your text editor. So let me format code, you will see what's happening. So this is the configuration, so with all table columns, with all things like that. And then you can basically import this chart somewhere, for example, in another environment. Because basically, you have ability to export all the data in this analytics and import it somewhere else. For example, you can say, I want to export all client logs or for some specific date range, like for the last 7 days, and then use that data somewhere. You can perform the migration of the documents, you can configure different settings for analytics. So analytics is pretty powerful, and remember that we are just now talking about the dev kit. So this is not the production version, this is the version for development. So together with that, of course, you have the general information of how it works, like what is the usage of storage, documents count, and so on. If you have a couple of clusters, it will have this information also. But what we were doing, as you remember, we were playing with custom charts. Another important feature of this custom chart is that you can download the data for it in a specific format. So that chart that we prepared, now we can grab the data from it in comma-separated value, in XML, in JSON, and with a specific filter. Like not only for today, but for example for the last 7 days, or even more. You can get this data by calling the specific URL. So that one also have the filters, so you can specify the format, start date, end date here. And if you will copy this URL and, for example, pass it in your browser or in any other application, it will reply with that JSON that you can basically use in another application to display analytics, which is really powerful because it will actually give you those messages. So as you can see, this is the filtered JSON with our error messages, starting with the hello world and finishing with the authentication error that we had. So analytics itself is pretty powerful, and custom charts are not only about those kind of tables. Actually, you can create here different type of charts. For example, let's go with the analyzing of network transactions, and with the line graph, let's have, for example, search for average response time or something like that. So we can select a different measurement type, for example, average, and round trip time, which is the good thing to understand. So what is the time needed for round trip call, starting from your client side, going to the server side, going to the backend, and back to the server side, and so on. So you can define this property. You see right away your chart data. We don't have so much data here. We are just doing this demo labs, but anyway, we are seeing some, and the average is about 89, which is pretty good. So what we can do is we can add some kind of filters if we want, or we can do some thresholding. For example, we can say that we want maybe what, like 40 milliseconds as the average threshold, and when we will add that, we will see that we are missing our goal for like 49 points and so on. So we can play with those thresholds, we can play with the filters, and we can create unique charts. And again, that can be filtered, that can be modified. All the data can be displayed for some specific date range here. Of course, you can create other types. You can do whatever actually needed. So, for example, let's go with network transactions again, but this time we are interested in adapters, and let's go with pie chart. So what we are interested in checking the adapter name. So how many times one adapter was called. As you remember, we have two. One is based on Java, second one is JavaScript. And with this chart, we will just see how often one and second adapter was called. So we see that Java adapter was called much more times than employee adapter, and this is expected because the first tab is shadow and we are not going to rating tab so often. And of course we can save that chart and display it right here. Another good thing about it is that if we are interested in particular log information, either client side, either server side, we can actually search for that specific thing, for that specific information that we are looking into. For example, this one, and not only get this particular message, but download, for example, 3 hours logs before that event. And this is again will get structured data in JSON format that you can then analyze and so on. Here we have much more things like analytics for push notifications, kind of all information about our crashes and security stuff, but then we need to talk about the real analytics for production instance, or at least test instance, but not a development kit. So on that step, our lab where we get used to work with our analytics inside MobileFirst Foundation is finished. Thank you.